Welcome. Thank you. I'm Shoto. I'm the Sukansu and the Shisui here at SokukoJi Buddhist Monastery, which means I help keep things going, trying to help with the programming and the property upkeep here. I just want to invite anyone who finds value in these teachings to please participate either by joining us for the Dharma talks from either Sokuzan or his monks, his students. Join us for any of the book studies throughout the week, even just one time throughout the week would be great to see you in our Zendo or to join us online. We could really use your help with your practice, joining us, and also financially to help us keep the programming going here. So thank you very much.
So thank you for joining us tonight. Can you hear me? I don't see any faces, so it's hard to tell.
We can hear you bowing.
Thank you, Jishin. All right, the talk tonight is called What is a Spiritual Teacher? This is a question I keep asking myself and coming up with different answers. So in the West, we don't really have a good model for the kind of spiritual teacher that we have in Buddhism. In the Christian religion, we have a priest or a pastor. They're not somebody who necessarily works closely with someone from their congregation, although they have different models for confession or different rituals. But it's not the same as having a teacher in our Buddhist tradition. It's also not the same as the other teachers that we have along the way. And our first teachers were our parents. And then we have our teachers in school. So from the time we're young, we look to a teacher to give us information, to guide us, to help us along in our development and our maturity. But this may or may not be a spiritual help, depending on who your parents were, what kind of teachers you've had. And then somewhere along the path, we get rebellious. Maybe we think we know more than our parents, our teachers. We know everything. There's that stage in our teens and 20s. And then we leave. So this is a stage on the path as well, where people think they have enough information and they leave. There are lots of different ways that happens. And it's not that we shouldn't break free at some point, but we are usually just beginning to understand something when we flee the path. So how do you find a teacher? Trungpa Rinpoche says, if you study and practice and you have an intention, you will find your teacher. I thought that was just incredible. I was practicing and studying, and I thought, I'm never going to find a teacher because I need an older teacher. And I did. It was just amazing. It was amazing that I found my teacher. So if your intention is strong and you're practicing and studying, you may find a teacher, and somewhere along the line, you may decide that, oh, this is not the right teacher. And that's important. It needs to be a teacher you have a connection to. So Chogyam Trungpa also says that the teacher is with you all the way on the path. This is probably, if we are lucky enough to find a teacher, our teacher, and understand what they're trying to teach, this is probably the most important relationship you'll have in your life. Seriously, it's really important. So it's not an easy path. And so at the first inkling that the teacher might be doing something wrong that doesn't match our expectations, what we've learned, our ethics, our ideas about what a teacher should be, we might start to criticize that teacher. So this is also a stage on the path. You're judging the teacher, you're judging yourself, you're always looking at your own projection, but this will come up. So it's a long path. It's very dangerous and it's very difficult. So it seems like in order to find a true teacher, you need to be a true student. You need to have a true desire to see what this is, to understand your true nature. You should have a connection with your teacher. And in some traditions, once you find a teacher, and this is many centuries ago, the teacher would send you to other teachers during your time of study with that teacher. Because in those days, I think they had more teachers. And teachers have different personalities. So the teacher is not his personality. He's not his behavior. He's not his body. He's not. But all those things, of course, are necessary in having a teacher because we're in the human realm and we need a human teacher. So the Buddha was not a deity. He was a human teacher. And that's important to have that model of a human teacher. But it's not like Christianity where you can try to act like Jesus or what would Jesus do. So we don't want to imitate the teacher. The teacher is trying to teach us who we are, not who he is. In the sense that he is a separate personality, but he is not a separate being from us. That's his teaching. So he's always trying to show us our world. He pulls us from the dark, greasy ocean of samsara. I got that from Chogyam Trungpa, but it felt true for me. Like I got pulled out of this dark, greasy ocean. It's not that I don't go diving there often, but I sort of got pulled out. So the initial path for me was very blissful, very happy. And I was warned, this won't last. It's a difficult path. Yeah, this is great. And it didn't last. Nothing lasts. It's all cyclic. So if the student has a sense of commitment and openness, there's devotion that shows up, but you don't need to worship and adore your teacher. That might happen for a while. But the teacher cannot show you something that you're not ready to see. Or if he shows it to you and you're not ready, it may look like it's all wrong. Like this is incorrect. So there are casualties on the spiritual path. I'm sorry to say. We've had a few here. This is difficult in the West. We are not used to this. The era that we live in right now, we're kind of being babied. You know, we have so many rules about what's right, what's wrong, how people should behave. And this is true in the conventional world, but how do we stay on a spiritual path with our vow to be with all things and make decisions about what things we don't want to be with. So I heard one teacher say there are no bad teachings, no bad teachers. A true teacher is just teaching. He has no agency. He's just teaching out of, I don't know, what would you say, Buddha nature, Dharmakaya? He's teaching out of a deep understanding of what this is and responding to what the student needs to hear. So he's like a messenger delivering this. There's no person in that. And I'm speaking as if I know, as if I know this. So I may be corrected. This is the way I'm understanding it. So they come in all shapes and sizes, and in Nepal and Tibet and in the Vajrayana, they say you should live 2 valleys away from your teacher so that you don't have to see him fighting with his wife or doing ordinary things that people do or going to the toilet or any of these ordinary things, so that you can keep the teacher on a pedestal for a while. To live in a monastery or family situation, you see the teacher as a human being, and the more human he is, the more we may be frustrated by our expectations of what should happen not being met. And the teacher is there to irritate you, is there to insult you, as I think Trungpa also said that. So it's not a smooth ride. It's not some pre-digested thing that he's going to give you that will be fun and pleasant. Maybe sometimes. So Nisargadatta Maharaj was a Advaita teacher, I think. And he lived in this little tiny place on top of his cigarette shop. And he was known to be kind of cranky. And when people asked questions, he would answer them in sometimes a harsh and sort of angry voice. But especially if they said something like, well, I'm having trouble with my wife. And what he said, don't ask me those questions. I don't know about these things. Ask me the questions about who you are, about what this is. I would say the Dharma. I don't know if that they use the Dharma in Advaita, probably. But ask me those questions. Don't ask me about conventional, mundane things. I don't know about those. So I read a book when I was having a great difficulty trying to figure out why my teacher wasn't doing what I thought he should be doing. And it was called the Guru Principle. So Guru, of course, is more in Tibet, Nepal. This is a Vajrayana usually, or an Indian title for a teacher. It just means spiritual teacher. We don't really use that here. This book was a little bit more to the Vajrayana side, and the Guru is a universal principle, so it's not attached to any one person. It's universal. So this is the way to look at the Guru, which I don't fully understand, but that it's more about what he isn't. He isn't a personality, even though he has one. So, and that's not anything to get rid of. It's difficult to understand this, but they are literally giving their life for you with the vow. Vow to be with all things. I vow to save all beings. I vow to do good, not do harm, to live in enlightenment. This is their vow, and it's all consuming. At least that's my understanding. So another thing that came to me was that the most horrifying thing that's happening in front of you in your life is none other than your own awareness. And this takes some psychological or psychic maturity. And there are tough lessons, tough teachers. I think I could take questions now if you have any questions. Shoto?
So bowing towards the beginning, I think you used the word dangerous, like this is dangerous. What is dangerous about the spiritual path?
I think if you are not prepared for it, that you can feel that you are being harmed in some way when you're being taught. And because you're still very much attached to your identity and your ego, that feels harmed, that feels harmful. It feels like there's damage being done. And you can't really damage an ego because it's not real. But I think there are other ways to be that are dangerous. And it depends on your psyche, really, what's going on with you. I've been in other spiritual communities, and people kind of flip out sometimes. Things come up. Meditation, a lot of meditation can bring up some difficult things that we push down or ignored, and that can be very difficult. It can come up as blame pointed towards the Sangha, the teacher, the teaching. And so that's the danger, I think, in that. Is there more?
Shadow bowing. That brings me to the other thing you said. I think like we're kind of babied in this era, and there's like a bunch of external structures that will back up that idea that someone's harmed. I'm just wondering how we work with that in our culture.
Yeah, difficult. So the perception of harm, and if you perceive that you've been harmed, then we say you've been harmed. But life is harm. You stub your toe, all kinds of things happen in your life. But now we can sue people, or we can blame people, or we can start a big conflagration where a mob gets together and decides that this needs to be addressed and this needs to be gotten rid of. And then there's people with pitchforks outside your monastery and ropes. More.
Shadow bowing. Is that something that's happened in other cultures too that you've come across? Bowing.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And as part of it is the cult mentality. And any little group that has, especially if they have a charismatic leader, a magnetic person, a strong leader, may look like a cult because we all gather together around this person and the teaching that this person is giving us. So there are a lot of examples of that. We've been reading a book where that's clearly pointed out in many instances, and I've seen it in a couple of communities that I've been involved in, one for quite a while, that they get to a certain point and then they're done and they don't want to look at that anymore. And then they start pointing and then they leave and destroy the community often, especially if it's not a big community that has a lot of financial backing and you can recover and start over. It depends on, before we had the internet, there were probably a lot more, but we don't know about them because they were not as easily broadcast everywhere to everybody. Any other questions? Myoka?
Milka bowing. Does a spiritual teacher need to be tough?
Sometimes they need to be tough. They teach to the student is how I understand it. So they give you what you need. If you need tough, they give you tough. If you need soft, they give you soft. They give you whatever they see that you need, and they don't think about that is how I understand it. It just arises spontaneously.
Milka bowing, will what's needed become apparent to us, even if it looks like it's not needed?
Are you saying if what's needed that you see the teacher pointing at, or just in
Yes.
general? Okay. Will it come to you? Well, it will be delivered to you, but you have to sign for it and receive it. Might be delivered by with a real smelly package. Might be dead fish in there.
Milka bowing, if we do get one of those smelly packages, do we need to understand what that's about?
Not necessarily, as long as you receive it. You can just like SokukoJi says, just eat it. Open wide, eat it.
Milka bowing, I'll pass it to you.
Nope.
Thank you.
Show
Sure, bowing. I think you said something earlier about how something in the area of like being ready for this or preparing for it. And it seems like we might be able to do like 20% of that, but there's a point where there's no way we could prepare for what's coming. I guess if we ask a teacher to help us, like, is that open-ended forever?
As long as you're a student of that teacher. Is that what you mean? Yeah. And I think the teacher understands, initially where you are in your learning and teaches accordingly. So they may teach on a more mundane level. And, there are the 5 paths, and I'm not sure I could get that right now, but they are preparation, accumulation, path of seeing, I'm missing one.
No more.
Path of no more learning. Yeah. So, those are various stages on the path. And we all come here at different levels. Some people are brand new to Buddhism. Some people have been practicing for many years in this tradition or other traditions. So it's the teacher's skill is to see where that student is at and teach to that student. Shut up.
Sure, bowing. Is this teacher clearer where the student's at than the student?
Sometimes, yeah. Usually I think, because it's hard to see your own neurosis. And we're constantly projecting, and this is what the teacher is trying to show us as a mirror. These are projections we project on the teacher, we project on each other. Why are you laughing?
You're smiling and it makes me happy.
Likewise. Further?
Shadow bowing. There's this phrase I've heard from more than one person. There's someone wearing a rock, or even a monk, where it's like not too far off. Like Sokuzan keeps teaching me in an area where he doesn't have my permission, and that's always just sounded really strange to me. I'm wondering what that is, or if you've heard that and have any insight.
Where does your permission end? Do you know where that is? Like, don't step on my toes or don't poke this area?
Shadow bowing. I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, if the student can withhold something, or if there's an area where the teacher's not allowed in.
Don't we?
Oh, yeah, we all have those areas, I think, and this is where he waits for an opening and then, or he waits for you to hand him your sword and then he. It's tricky. The nature of ego is to defend and not to be seen. We're always hiding out. Even when we're trying to be open and we say, yes, give it to me, teach me everything. And then they poke that one place that we don't want to be poked. And it just shows us where and how much we really don't want to be seen.
So, if that keeps coming up for somebody, is it time to find a new teacher?
No, if that keeps coming up, that means the teacher is getting you to see some of that. I mean, I think, but there may be other reasons to leave a teacher, but generally you would stay with your teacher when it gets difficult. Yeah.
Thank you.
Elena?
Elena bowing. I'm thinking about how you were saying that the ego can't be harmed and this is a dangerous path. But when we talk about trauma that's done to the body or the psyche, for instance, child sexual abuse, is that done to the ego as well?
Oh, that's a tough one. That they're children, they are just developing their egos. So there is the conventional way to look at harm and abuse. And of course, there is harm and abuse. When we're on a spiritual path and trying to see what the truth is and giving a teacher permission to point things out, then we need to look at how, if we are really being harmed, how are we being harmed? Who is we? What is being harmed? Yeah, but there is abuse. There really is abuse, and if you feel like you're being abused, then yeah, it's time to leave.
Elena bowing. I was just wondering, like, when that's something I have to work with, so I guess it's like becomes a dangerous part when that shows up. How do you work with the Sangha and the teacher, or does anybody have that answer?
You mean when the feeling of harm and abuse comes up for you?
Like just when whatever reaction comes out, how do you know how to contain it safely or things like that?
You might not always need to contain it, but it would be good to talk to your teacher about that for sure, especially if you think he is the one or she is the one harming you. To do that first, and then the teacher may be able to help you work with it. Jishin?
Shimbawing. Thank you for choosing that topic, or I don't know whether it was your choice. I believe that this is a very, very important topic, and we actually approach it so far only from that one direction because of the circumstances in the Sangha. But I would like to say first of all, thank you for being such a true teacher. And I think that if any of us can say, I feel like a true teacher, is just because we have being such a true student. I think that the quality of being a true student comes through having a true teacher. And this is how I perceive Sokuzan. And what kind of bothered me over the last number of months when we were discussing the situation in the Sangha that it was like one-sided perspective, that out of everything which Sokusan is doing for us all the time, daily, giving his life completely, we are basically focusing right now on some kind of behaviors which were intended to point the truth to individual students, and we have forgotten about all of those endless actions and teachings which were pointing to us to help us deal with our own difficulties. So I'm grateful to hear like a little bit more, and which perhaps can open our view. Yes, I'm not sure that you mentioned other teachers and how it is. What actually brings people together to form the negative response as we have been experiencing. Now, what comes to my mind is St. John of the Cross, who was the mystic, Christian mystic, and who was treated terribly just for the fact that he saw the truth and he was standing for the truth, and he was beaten and persecuted by the other monks in a horrible way. So I'm aware that I'm kind of bringing different points into it, but what I would like to say that how do you see maybe in the form of a question, how do you see the importance of seeing the broad value of the true spiritual teacher beyond those situations which can be difficult on our path to us when we are challenged by the teacher, and how can we see everything which we have received over a long period of time from that teacher, which was basically the showing us the love and how powerful love and care for us is. Bowing.
Thank you for the question. The true teacher is the true student. And I think how Sokusan teaches us that things are illusory, that it's an illusion, that they don't have any real substance, that there is really no one behind all this feelings of hurt or betrayal. That's something we need to look at. And eventually, for me, it's been, those are the times that while they're painful and life is suffering, they're painful, but it really helps you to look further into, how is this not real? How am I feeling this way, given all the teachings I've looked at over the years? And there it is, it's still there. So it may not go away. But that's how to work with it, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Shoto.
Shoto bowing. Is it appropriate for some to leave in a fit of rage?
I've heard that everything's appropriate. And maybe, but maybe you will come back in a fit of devotion once your rage subsides a little bit. So it's good to look at it.
So line, does the student owe the teacher any gratitude?
The student, the teacher is not expecting any, that you owe him anything, him or her anything, so. But you will have that. You will have that. If you've received the teaching, how can you not have gratitude?
So I'm just thinking of the example of Sokuzan chairs where it's like 10 years where he was kind of fighting COVID. And then some of our Sangha does that for a little bit and we're like, what's that about? Even though it's part of our lineage. You know,
And if we just wait, things, you've noticed that moods don't last, they change. You can't be in a rage forever. Oh. Maybe. But it would be a different kind of rage if it will change. Shokudawa.
Shokudawa bowing. Did you mention the universality of the guru?
Maybe I just said the guru principle, but yeah, the universality is of the guru.
Do you have a sense personally of having a teacher and that pointing to that idea of the universality of that situation?
If you're asking, has Sokuzan pointed to that? I think he has. He's talked about it. And he talks about it when he says, there's no one here. Leaves his hands. It's a universal principle. Don't imitate your teacher. Is that what you're asking? Or are you asking if I understand what the universal principle of the guru?
I'm wondering if in your everyday life, when you're not around your teacher, physically, if the world is your teacher.
Well, I think that that's true. I don't know how much I realize that I know Trungpa has said situations where his teacher. Don't think I'm to that point yet where, Sokuzan is still my teacher. And does that answer?
I'll try one more time.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't mean it like all the time, but are there situations where you have a sense that because you have a teacher, this situation is actually showing up the same way or something like that?
Yes, I think so. I think so. That his teaching is permeating my response to a situation. Is that something like what you're asking? Yeah, I think so.
Thank
Jalen?
Jalen bowing. Does having a teacher has it helped you become better friends with yourself? Bowing.
It has, but sometimes I'm still not friends with myself. But it has helped, yes. Deb?
They're bowing. What happens to the student when the teacher leaves the physical realm? Bowing. If I can clarify maybe a little more, what happens meaning? How does a student see clearly on the path without the teacher teaching daily to bowing?
The teacher doesn't ever stop teaching, even when he's not here in body. He's always available. Is there more?
To bowing. I feel like there's another question, but my attention keeps going to SokukoJi pointing us to why he teaches the same thing over and over again, that what I'm left with will be exactly the same thing that he shows up daily to teach, to bowing.
Was that a question? I'm not sure, but I liked it. What?
I'm not sure either. Thank you. Bowing.
Thank you. Elena?
Elena bowing. What is happening when I go in for a Dokusan with SokukoJi and all of my questions fall apart into nothingness?
Happens all the time. Happens to me, happens to everybody, I think, at some point. Maybe all the time. It's, yeah, I don't know if I can say what that is. Go ahead.
Elena bowing, I guess, why does it seem like none of them work anymore?
We're just on receive. So there's nothing to, no output. Shoto?
Shoto bowing. In the area I feel Chokudawa was asking about, I feel like there's kind of an extreme where Sokuzan's, I've witnessed him apparently like zap somebody for saying this, but like everything's my teacher. Wondering how that might be going too far or premature for some people, or what you could say around that bowing.
I've heard people say that too, and that's usually when they don't want a teacher because everything is your teacher. But there's truth in the statement that everything is your teacher, but you have to be then receiving everything, a student of everything. I don't know how easy that is to do. So we can take, I can take another question and then we can take a break before sitting and service. Shoto.
Sorry. Is the spiritual teacher actually teaching us something? No.
He's not a conventional teacher that's giving out stuff. He's not giving you information, although that may be included, you know, like when the Buddha was born or some of those so-called facts. But there's something in the Diamond Sutra, and I might have you probably know this, where Subhuti asks, or the Buddha asks Subhuti, did the Buddha ever teach the Dharma? Do you know that one? That one?
I forgot.
He says, no, Subhuti, the Buddha never taught the Dharma. Do you know that one? I used to know it. I had it memorized, but that was a few years ago.
I think there's a bunch of those in there where
But as far as teaching, what the teacher can't actually give you something, can only point at what is symbolizing something or point at something that will help you to see your true nature. Did I answer that?
Shoto bowing. It's kind of coming out of that part we read in book study today, something like when you read or study with a sutra or a teacher, you receive teachings without the teacher. It was something like that.
Dogen?
Mhm.
I don't remember, but Dogen is very puzzling.
Sort of, it's something like in that area of Sokuzan says, we already know this. Do you have any insight into what that means?
Mm.
Knowing,
Yeah, because knowing in that sense is what we're covering up. And if we just can uncover the knowing of our true nature, how is that one of the slogans, one of the 52 or 51 slogans says something about the 4 kayas or the 3 kayas or the ultimate shunyata protection. I don't know what that means. It just came up. Can you elaborate on your question? I've lost it.
Shoto going. A hard area to ask around for me. Becomes like really esoteric really quick, it seems like. What is the teacher pointing to? Knowing.
Well, he's showing you your world. He's pointing to your mind. He's trying to point to who you are. I think that's what he's pointing at. He's pointing to I really want to ask Sokuzan the question, but it's not a book study, so.
You're the teacher. Teach.
Okay.
Combine, what is the ultimate question for a spiritual teacher from a student?
Well, the basic question is, what is the nature of reality? That's a common basic question. What is this, basically? And then he spends years and years telling us over and over and over.
Combine, what is it about it that we need that repetition over and over and over?
I think because we can't understand it conceptually, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sense out of it when it doesn't make sense. So with the teacher's inspiration, we just keep looking at it through facing the wall, study and practice. We just look at that. Okay, oh, Deb, go ahead.
Deb Bowing, I hope you have time for one more. My question's related to Sangha, and it came up when Elena was asking her first question. If a Sangha member has been psychically and physically abused at a young age, hard to know, again, what ego has been exposed to or how that is affected. But is it ever appropriate to mention to Sangha members about triggers for yourself? Is that a part of what the Sangha can accept or hear? Deb Bowing?
I think if you're in relationship to a Sangha member, you might say that to someone. I don't know if you want to tell the Sangha that as a whole. It's then just reinforcing that identity of having been abused or being an abuser, even if that's the other end of it. Yeah, it takes, and I don't mean to minimize abuse or harm at all. I know what happens.
Thank you, Debang. That's very helpful, the way you explain that. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can close. We'll dedicate the merit. Thank you so much for showing up tonight.